Welcome to the Becoming babyREADY podcast, your podcast for queer family planning. My name is Sam, and throughout this podcast, you'll hear me have conversations with professionals who work alongside people who want to start and grow their families, as well as parents of intentionally created families. Everyone I speak to identifies as being part of the 2S LGBTQIA+ community. This is your opportunity to learn answers to questions you didn't even know you had. Midwifery care can look very different depending on where you are in the world. In some parts of the world, they are primary care providers during pregnancy, labor, birth, and the immediate postnatal period, while in other parts of the world, they can take on a variety of other forms. Today, I have the opportunity to introduce you to midwife Marea Goodman, who practices in California. Marea also helps individuals and couples create their families by assisting with home insemination. They are an author and they have created Pregnant Together, an online community for queer and solo parents. What Marea hasn't done would be a shorter list than to tell you what Marea has done. Ultimately, have a listen for yourself. Welcome. I'm really excited today to be speaking with Marea from Pregnant Together, and they have a variety of hats that they wear, and truthfully, it's probably best to let Marea tell you themselves all about their professional role. Welcome, Marea.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm a lot of things. I would say first and foremost, I'm a queer parent of 3 kids. I'm also a midwife. That's how I started working with pregnant people in the queer community, and the co-author of the book Baby Making for Everybody, which goes through lots of different everything that folks need to know about growing their families for LGBTQ plus folks and solo parents. And most recently, I'm the founder of the online community Pregnant Together, which is a place for queer folks and solo parents to support through trying to conceive, pregnancy, postpartum, and parenting. And it's this like super, super sweet online community with tons of people going through growing their families in all sorts of ways. And it's really exciting for me to be growing these resources for folks who really need it and don't really have another space to get it. So I'm excited to be here today to share more about it.
I love that. I can't wait to learn more about that. I'm first going to ask you, because as we were discussing earlier, I'm just west of Toronto, Ontario, Canada, where we have midwives as regulated health professionals within our province, governed by the province and covered by our universal health care here. I'm not going to ask you to argue for or against that. That's not what I was going to ask you about. But can you define, just so that I understand where you are in the US, what does it mean to be a midwife where you are, and how does that affect how you practice?
Yeah, in the US, there are 2 paths of licensure for midwifery. There's the certified nurse midwife, which is more comparable to the Canadian system, although we don't have universal health care, so the way that it works is different. And then the second path, which is the one that I took, is out of hospital midwifery. So I work outside the hospital. Primarily my experience is in home birth, and then I do a lot of fertility care and inseminations for folks looking to stay outside of the fertility clinic system. And we have a fair amount of Canadian members in Pregnant Together, and I'm understanding that it's different there. It seems like midwives aren't really doing at-home inseminations in Canada, which is a bummer.
It is a bummer, and it's interesting that you say that, because I was first listening to a podcast maybe a year ago, and I heard a midwife on that podcast talking about doing inseminations, and my mind just went boom. I can't believe that that's a role that the midwives play, because here they're really primary care providers from conception through to 6 weeks post-birth, but they're not involved prior to conception, which, I mean, I guess the government can only fund so much, so they're only going to do so much and make their scope so broad. But I would think that, I think about my own experience with midwifery care, and when I was expecting my second child, going for my appointments and having a 30-minute appointment where I really sat down and got into the nitty-gritty of what was going on with the pregnancy and where I'm at and where baby was at and everything else. My midwives were always so very invested and involved in all of that care. So for me, thinking about that also playing a role prior to conception and the ease, because it's an emotional journey creating a family, especially if you are in the queer community. So you have that added layer of using a gamete that isn't related to you. And if you have a partner or your partner, that all of that kind of factors in. So to have somebody who's just got that extra level of compassion and care that can sit with you and work alongside you just feels like it must be such a gift.
Yeah, I think so. And I think, there's often a lot of, there's so much to figure out when we're growing our families. And there's often some element of grief involved in like the queer and solo parent family formation process because, many of us would love to be able to make a baby in the privacy of our own home without having to involve healthcare practitioners and fertility clinics are institutions that arose out of supporting heterosexual couples who are experiencing infertility to grow their families. They were not built for families like ours. So it is really nice when we do often have to involve outside people to have that like extra layer of intimacy and care.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah.
How long have you been working in that capacity? Have you had the opportunity to just witness like so many babies come and watch them grow and their families evolve and their siblings arrive and all of the
I
things?
have. Yeah. I attended my first birth in 2011. And then, yeah, I started doing fertility care. I learned from some midwives in the community in 2016. And so that's kind of when I started focusing a little bit more on like the queer community. And it kind of just happened organically as a queer person, working with more and more folks who, are part of my own experience too.
Totally get it. That resonates with
Yeah.
me significantly.
Yeah.
Are there things that you might look for working in the capacity that you do that your clients would argue makes you better suited to work with the 2S LGBTQIA plus community as opposed to your perhaps cisgendered heterosexual peers, which is again, not to knock their capabilities or their care or their bedside manner or anything else, but just gives you a different layer?
Yeah. I think having the lived experience of being both a gestational and a non-gestational parent, knowing what IUI feels like, the process of using a sperm donor, like I do think that I have a unique or not even like I have an intimate lived understanding of growing queer family. And I know like I'd been attending births for 10 years before I gave birth myself, and it really changed the way that I practice and the way that I understand birth. And they're wonderful. I think I was a great midwife before having a baby in my own body, but, and plenty of cisgendered heterosexual people can be like awesome providers and allies to folks going through this process. And yeah, for myself, when I'm receiving care, I love knowing that someone just like gets me on an intimate level. And that's something that I feel, privileged to be able to bring to my clients and my community members is just that really like true felt cellular understanding of how intense this process can be.
Mm-hmm. On every single
Yeah.
level, along
On
the
every
journey.
level. Yeah.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. Tell us more about Pregnant Together. Where was this born from?
Yeah, so I co-wrote the book Baby Making for Everybody with another queer midwife colleague, Ray Rachlin, and it was published in 2023. No, 2022. Time is weird.
Right.
Yes, so we started writing the book in 2020. At the time, there hadn't been a book on queer family formation in the last 20 years. The most recent one had been The Ultimate Guide to Lesbian Conception. And it was a little bit, yeah, great book, a little
Mhm.
antiquated in
Mhm.
certain ways. And so through the process of writing this book, we really wanted to make this information super accessible, not have it be kind of behind this wall of medical jargon. And yeah, we wanted people to have these resources that they need. And through that process, we also kept coming back to the personal experience. We like asked a bunch of community members to share quotes and stories about what it was like for them, and really thinking about the mental health experience of growing your family. And we just kept going back to this theme of community and how much it matters to be connected to
Mhm.
other people going through a similar process. And so a couple months before our book actually was published, I launched Pregnant Together a little over a year ago. And I think the pandemic really opened up this possibility to have a virtual community. And it's so sweet. I think especially like we've got a lot of people from the Bay Area and New York and Washington State and, places where the laws are very friendly for queer family formation. There are a lot of folks who are growing their queer and solo parent families, but then we have people from Montana and Utah who are like, there's one fertility clinic in the entire state, and they don't have the kind of community and resources that they really need to be able to tap into locally. And so, yeah, I just feel really excited about seeing people they're posting questions about, their known donor has suboptimal sperm parameters and what have other people done, or like, what are people's experiences on these fertility meds? And, just tons of people commenting and sharing their knowledge and experience, and meeting once a month in different capacities, and just really building a connection around this experience that I think goes such a long way in the trying to conceive and family building process.
I think I think that it's just a gift that you've given the community that they perhaps don't even know that they're missing yet, but once they find it, then all of a sudden this light bulb goes off, because it is such a, and I'm sure that it is for the cisgendered heterosexual community as well. When they are seeking fertility support, it's because they've had no luck conceiving on their own. And so they're going into it sort of, with sad hearts. But a lot of us go into it with very open, excited, happy hearts, thinking, oh, I've
Mhm.
got no reason to think I've got fertility issues. I just need somebody to help me. So
Right.
help me. And so the journeys are so different, but also very isolating. I think one of the things that COVID did give us was that reminder that it's okay to reach out, to connect outside of our own four walls. And so your
Mhm.
timing probably for Pregnant Together has been just perfect, where people are thinking, excellent, I do have a known donor with motility issues. And so anybody else had that experience where we didn't know
Mhm.
before COVID where we would go to ask those questions, but we desperately wanted them answered.
Totally. Yes. I mean, there's such a lack of knowledge about how to even start the process. And so part of the community is also there's a bunch of content and resources and like recorded videos of me or other experts talking about the process of choosing a donor and navigating fertility interventions and tracking your fertility, and just like there's like the nitty gritty, the information, and then there's also the chat rooms, and then once a month support groups. So we do a trying to conceive a support group once a month for non-gestational parents, solo parents, people of color. What else do we have? Pregnant people, postpartum. We're really just trying to like bring folks together during all these really tender moments.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That's
Yeah,
amazing. And I will make sure that in the show notes, I provide people with resources to be able to find your website and learn more and join the
great.
community and all of the things.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I'll share a special link for your listeners so they can get their first month free. And yeah, it's $20 a month. Like, really want to make it super accessible for people
Mhm.
and not have, big barriers for accessing the support.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because having a baby's not cheap.
No, especially for our
virtually for free.
community. Yes.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Those intentionally created families cost money. And so
Yeah.
to not have another barrier be there is amazing. Hold on for just a moment. We'll be right back. It's Sam from babyREADY. If you have been listening to this podcast, then you know that the focus is to help you find answers to questions you didn't even know you had. And now you get to do it in person. On Saturday, June 8th at the 519 in Toronto on Church Street, I am hosting an in-person event where you get to come and listen to different people speak about the work that they do to help members of the queer community start or grow their families through parenthood. For more information, visit my website, www.babyready.info. Are there any pearls of wisdom that you offer your clients and the people you work alongside and support that no one else necessarily would know to offer?
It depends like where folks are in this process. And I do also do, like one-on-one coaching around various aspects of this process. I think there's so many factors, where you're getting your donor sperm, what your fertility picture is like, making that decision of are you going to try on your own versus, go to a fertility clinic. When you ask that question, the thought that popped into my mind is I lead a how to choose a sperm donor workshop. And one of the things that I just see over and over is this, kind of paralyzing feeling of overwhelm that many of us experience, in the choosing a donor process, and also often in other aspects of this family building journey. And, so for example, in that workshop, I have a method that I talk to folks about on doing a journal exercise, write down every single quality that you would love to have in a donor, just like no holds barred, write it all down. If you have a partner, have them do the same. Then rank your top 5. It can sometimes be a painful process to be letting go of all those other things. Rank your top 5 and then use only your top 3 to really guide your decision. And I think, I try to remind people that the donor process, choosing a donor, is important, but I think it's less important the farther along in the process you get, and trying to offer a bird's eye view, to that experience, and knowing that, yes, it's important to be thoughtful about where that other half of your child's genetic material is coming from. And it's only a small portion. It's like a step on this process of growing your family. And so really trying to bring perspective, reduce overwhelm. And often it's addressing those feelings underneath that are the roots of the overwhelm. Yeah. We often feel overwhelmed when we have a lot of feelings about things. And so it's how do we build emotional resources through this process that will help it feel and be more simple?
That makes perfect sense. And we do want to find the perfect match, but at the same time, what we want to have is a family. And so what are the barriers you are willing to step over, and what are the ones that are your hard and fast? So that's a great way to do it, is to kind of to list it all out and then keep paring that list down to really what is fundamentally at the core of what's important in your heart.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
And it would depend too on the background of the person who's looking for a donor too, because there's a lot of donors available in some groups and very few donors available in other groups. And so that can really impact how you choose as well.
Absolutely. Yes. The internal values and then the external limitations are real. And I think, yeah, it's such a, I try to remind folks that this process is part of what prepares us to be parents, is kind of, even when, maybe especially when that family building journey is really challenging and circuitous. Like parenting is a challenging and imperfect and beautiful process. And, it starts for those of us who are queer and solo parents, like it starts before pregnancy, before, before the conception moment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because
Yeah.
it's already formed in our heart before it's happened anywhere else, for sure.
Right. Right.
You have created a family of your own, and there have been probably lots of different decisions you've had to make along the way, lots of different support networks you've had to utilize. In your family creation process and through your journey, were there times when you were made to feel as though you were the other simply for being not who someone else would have expected you to be in terms of parental role or any of those factors?
My family building journey was unique in that my ex-partner now and I met when she had a 7-year-old and was intending to be a solo parent by choice. And so we came together when she already had chosen a donor and soon got pregnant. And we blended our families in that way. And then I gave birth some years after. Our youngest just turned 3 in January. So I have, it's funny that in my community, we have all of these different groups for many different experiences, including like non-gestational parents and solo parents. And I feel that my experience now, especially being a 2 household family, my experience spans many of these, solo parenting, partnered parenting, non-gestational parents, birth parents. So yeah, it's been quite a journey in my own family formation process. And I think it just is part of, I'm hearing so many examples of folks in the community doing their family building process in really unique and creative ways. They're like, I'm going to be a solo parent, but I've been dating my girlfriend for a year and she's not ready to be a parent, but maybe at some point. And, or they're a couple and they have a known donor who's super close to them, who's going to plan to, be really involved in the kid's life. Like they're just very creative examples of how folks are doing it. And I think it's a really beautiful time to be connecting with other folks who are really reimagining what that like nuclear, traditionally heterosexual family structure, how that can change and serve us in different ways.
It's so true. And it's funny because while I know what you say to be true and I've witnessed it myself, I hadn't actually thought about it all kind of coming together like that. But it's true. And many people tick many boxes and all of them feel equally important in how they would define themselves in terms of the parenting role and the family dynamic role and that kind of thing. It's actually a very succinct way of putting it all together and saying, you know what, I think we're doing it right, and maybe we're doing it the way that it's supposed to be done.
Right. I mean, the pressure of the nuclear family system in this moment in the world it's a lot. And, no matter how people do it, just like extending our layers of support is so important.
That's very true. That's very true.
Yeah.
And I hear from people lots of times who say, well, doesn't a child need, a male influence or a female influence or something like that? And these archaic ideas and to think that we can create the families and support our children as they are, who they are, and let them sort of choose how they unfold their lives for themselves and just support that along the way without necessarily worrying about who their role models are, as long as the people who surround them are people who love them and who love us, so that we feel like we're all interconnected on a truly deeply emotional level. That's what they need more than anything. They need the security of knowing that love and care is there more than anything else.
For sure. Absolutely.
When you were on your family creation path yourself and were looking at the decisions that you needed to make, if you were to come across a podcast like this or a baby event, I was explaining to you that I'm going to be doing an in-person event, and wanted to learn from practitioners or professionals outside of the scope of your own practice, and what you're capable of providing to yourself, who would you want to hear from? Are there any specific kinds of professionals that you would want to be able to learn from?
I mean, I think understanding the legal landscape is really important. I think, and it's so regional. So I think being able to hear from family lawyers who understand how to, protect the families that we build is really important. I think the landscape of fertility and the choices that we make around our own fertility is really complex, especially in this post-COVID world when sperm prices have nearly doubled. So people are paying like $2,000 a vial for sperm these days, um, and the rates of infertility in the world are increasing. So there are just a lot of complex decisions that people need to make around their priorities as far as which insemination route makes sense. Fertility is complex in that, like, our bodies we're not robots. We don't know exactly when we will ovulate and when this ideal insemination process will take place, or if we will be best served by medication and ultrasound monitoring. And I think I think people need support around navigating making these choices, and not only like understanding the data about fertility success, but also understanding like your own values and preferences when it comes to how engaged in that medical system you want to be. Also budget and financial constraints are really real. So really just like people who can help you sort through all of those choices, I think is important.
I think that that's very true. Makes me, with what you've said, it's made me wonder, and I don't know because I haven't done the research on it, how many people are, because if costs are going up, and they are, then people are going to take more risks. That's just a statistical fact. When people feel like they're backed into a financial corner, but they want something very desperately, then many people will do very many desperate things to be able to achieve their goals. Is that something that you've seen? And that worries me because I worry about, I mean, I want people to have what they want, and I hate when it doesn't feel like it's accessible to people because of something as simple as finance. And you say something like, sperm prices have doubled for a vial, and people know that, sure, I might get lucky with an IUI with one vial, but now my best bang for my buck is to do IVF, but I don't necessarily want to do the medications. I have to pay for that too, and have the egg retrieval and all of the things. Are you seeing people think along those lines of trying to just find Facebook groups of people where they can get sperm for free? Or I just don't even know all the
Yeah, I mean, I do think that the financial piece is part of why some folks are, really trying to find known donors, so they're not, having to pay for sperm. And, I always recommend crossing your T's and dotting your I's when it comes to the known donor relationship, and making sure to sign contracts and understand the laws in your state or country around that choice. And yeah, there are a lot of folks in the Pregnant Together community kind of wondering about moving to IVF sooner than I saw some years ago. And that's really like a shift that I'm seeing of people maybe trying, 3 or 4 IUIs and being like, okay, like we're gonna try something else now. Whereas before I saw more folks trying for like 6 or 12 months before moving to higher interventions. And one thing that is cool is I think there are at least in the US. I don't know what the situation is in Canada, but there are more insurance companies offering some fertility coverage. At the beginning of this year, the official medical definition of infertility changed to include relationship status. So that's important for getting certain tests covered by insurance that maybe weren't covered before. I know in New York State, it's now required, and I believe Maine is another state that it's now required for all companies to offer fertility coverage to people, and it's opening a lot of doors for a lot of folks. And yeah, it's still an imperfect system, but I hope in the next chunk of time we will see more coverage and just like some more support for folks on the financial end to be able to grow their families.
Yeah, I hope so too. I want to remind listeners that if you're looking for a support network to have your questions answered, even before you start attending appointments for fertility treatments, and you want to create that support network, you want to find other people who are on the same place on their life path as you happen to find yourself, then please do visit Pregnant Together, and access to that link will be in the show notes. What is the best way for potential clients to meet you, find you?
I'm around. I'm on Instagram, pregnanttogether.community. I generally check my messages. If you go to pregnanttogether.com, you'll see lots of information about not only the community, but also working with me one-on-one. So I offer a 6-month package for helping folks through every aspect of this process. And you can also book an hour with me. Just ask whatever questions come up around timing or donors or yes, all the things. And then if you go to community.pregnanttogether.com, that's where you can check out the plans and just get connected to folks going through similar processes. And yeah, we've got lots of people that are like, I'm planning to start growing my family in a year, and I just want to get all the resources that I can. And then, other folks that join when they have a 2-month-old, and really trying to support the queer folks and solo parents through all the different aspects of this process.
Perfect. Excellent. Is there anything we haven't touched on that you were really hoping we'd spend a few minutes discussing today?
I don't think so.
Been a pretty robust conversation, I have to say.
I think so too. Yes, I know. I love all your rainbows behind you are very sweet, and on you.
Thank you. Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for taking the time out of your day to chat with me and to explain to people a bit more about the work that you do. I think that what you offer is it's more valuable than people even realize until they have the chance to kind of check it all out. And so if you're a listener and you haven't checked it out yet, do yourself a favor.
Well, thank you, Sam, for having me. And yeah, keep me posted on how we can team up in the future. And I'm happy to send you postcards and all that sort of stuff for your event. And yeah, just let me know.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you for joining me today on the Becoming Baby Ready podcast. If you have a story that you'd like to share, or you know someone who might, if you're a professional who works in the capacity of helping people start and grow their families, and you identify as being a part of the 2S LGBTQIA+ community yourself, then please don't hesitate to reach out. We always have room for more stories to share, and there's always more learning to do.